Hello and welcome to the Maths Guide. Now, over the last 2 days we've been looking at constructions, but when you're new to constructions it does take you a little bit of time to practice drawing them out. So whereas I might take 5 minutes for me to do it, it might take 30 minutes for you to do those questions. So let's go back and have a look at questions that you're more familiar with that might take a little bit less time. So we're going to be looking at percentages again today, and today I want to be using the unitary method. Now in previous examples we used the unitary method or algebra or the undoing method, but today I specifically want to look at the unitary method because for a lot of people it makes more sense to them what they're doing, and it's important to keep in your mind what you're doing and it should make sense. You shouldn't just be throwing formulas at things to try and figure out what's going on and hoping for an answer. You should have an idea of what you're doing step by step as you go through the questions. Also, there's going to be some questions where the unitary method is very useful, particularly in cost and profit. So we're going to be looking at that today. So looking at cost, profit and selling price. Let's say John buys a bike for €200 and sells it for a profit of 20%. When we say he makes a profit of 20%, we mean a profit of 20% on the cost of price of the bike. So we mean 20% of 200. So always remember what that percentage is. A percentage is a fraction. And the question you need to keep in mind is, what is it a fraction of? You don't just have 20%, you have 20% of something. And you need to think, what is it 20% of? So in this question, it's a fraction of the cost price. So I'm talking about 20% of the €200 that it costs John. Another question. John buys a bike and sells it for a profit of 20%, and I'm told that the selling price is €240. And I'm asking, what did he buy it for? Well, again, we try and remember, what is it a profit of? It's a profit of 20% on the cost price of the bike. So what's the selling price? The selling price is the cost plus the profit. We don't know the cost, so we can say that the selling price is the cost plus the profit. Or we could say that it's 100% of the cost price plus 20% of the cost price. Remember, a profit of 20% means 20% of the cost price. So we get 100% of the cost price plus 20% of the cost price gives us 120% of the cost price. And then using that information, we will be able to work out what the cost is. Okay, because we know that 120% of the cost price is €240. But to look at how to do that question, let's go back and have a look at direct proportion, a question you'd be more familiar with. Let's say John buys 13 pens for €26 and we're asked how much 7 pens cost. That's a tricky question. It's not exactly half. It's not quite €13. So the way that you do this is we use the unitary method and we write down 13 pens cost €26. The unitary method means we work out what 1 pen costs. So we know 13 pens cost 26, so we can work out that 1 pen costs €2. And then we can work out that 7 pens cost €14. Let's bring that back to cost, profit and selling price. John buys a bike and sells it for a profit of 20%. The selling price is €240. What price did he buy the bike for? Again, that profit is 20% of the cost price. We say the selling price is 100% of the cost price, the cost, plus 20% of the cost price, which is our profit, gives us 120% of the cost price. So we know 120% of the cost price is €240. But what are we trying to figure out? We want to know what he bought the bike for. So we want to find 100% of the cost price. We know 120% of the cost price is 240. So to find 100, we use the unitary method and we find out what 1% of the cost price is first. Then it's easy to find 100% of the cost price. So 1% is just 240 divided by the 120s. That gives us €2. And then you can just multiply up to find out €200. Let's have a look at another example question. Mary sells a jacket for a profit of 25%. Again, it's 25% of the cost price. Always keep that in mind. 25%, we're not using that just as a number. It's 25% of something. It's really important to keep that in your mind. That's why I'm saying it so often. So you're told in this question, you're told the profit that she makes is €75 and you're asked what was the cost price. So in this question, you're told what the profit is. And we know that the profit is 25% of the cost price. So we say 25% of the cost price is €75. What are we asked? We're asked what the cost price is. So we want to know what 100% of the cost price is. If we know that 25% of the cost price is 75, then we can see that 1% is 75 divided by 25, which is €3, and then we can easily find 100% of the cost price is €300. Next question. Mary sells a jacket that cost her €50 for a profit of 30%. Now you already know how to do these questions, but let's do it using the unitary method. We're asked what is the selling price, which is the cost price plus the profit, which means 100% of the cost price plus 30% of the cost price. We know what 100% of the cost price is, and we want to find out what 130% is. Again, we find out what 1% is, and then we can find out 130%. Why am I finding 130% this time? Well, it's because I'm looking for the selling price, which is 100% of the cost price plus 30% of the cost price. So we're looking for 130% of the cost price. What did I know? I know what 100% is. I know the cost price is €50, and I want to find 130. So we start off with what we know. We write down what we want to find, and then we use the unitary method in between to get from 100 to 130. We find 1% first. Okay, so that's quite straightforward, but you've done these questions before, but I want you to really practice using the unitary method here, which means finding what 1% of something is, and I want you to always keep in mind, what does it mean when I say a profit of 30%? It means 30% of the cost price, and this will be important tomorrow when we're looking at something that's a little bit different. So keep that in mind. Have a go at the questions, and the best of luck. So let's look at an example question, and the term that we're going to be using in this question is markup. So let's say John sells a coat for €236 with a markup of 18%. Well, what does markup mean? When we say markup, we mean that the profit that she makes in this case is 18% of the cost price of the coat. So if I tell you that John sells a coat for 236 with a markup of 18%, that means the initial cost is 100% of the cost. The markup is 18% of the cost. So the selling price will be 118% of the original cost of the coat. So in this question, we know that 118% of the cost price of the coat is €236. So we might be asked to find either the markup, which is the profit she makes, or the cost. How do we do that? Well, if we're told again that a coat is sold for €236 with a markup of 18%, that means 118% of the cost is €236. 1% of the cost is €2, so 100% of the cost is €200. And if you wanted to know what the markup is, you would also just multiply that €2 by 18 to get the 18%, which is €36. Again, I'm making it very clear that we're talking about a percentage of something so that you know what we're talking about. And in the next questions that we're going to be doing tomorrow, they'll be slightly different. So have a go at these questions and just know that markup means the profit that she's making, and it means a percentage of the cost.